Hey there, and welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're plunging into a topic that, well, it really touches all of us eventually. The common health changes that tend to show up as we get older.
Definitely a universal experience.
And you've pulled together this really fascinating stack of notes and articles. It covers quite a range: joint pain, skin stuff, bone density, even gut health.
Yeah, good cross-section.
So let's make this our mission today, to kind of crack open those specific sources with you. We want to pull out the absolute most important nuggets, maybe uncover some surprising facts your research brought up, and really figure out, what's actually happening in the body as the years go by.
Sounds like a plan.
Our goal, and this comes directly from the material you've shared, is to cut through all the noise, give you a clear, actionable understanding of the what, the why, and maybe most importantly, the how of navigating these common changes.
Exactly. Taking the info you gathered and turning it into real insights.
Think of it as your personal guided tour through your own research.
Okay, I like that. So, drawing straight from the sources you provided, where should we start? Maybe with something many people notice first: joint pain and stiffness.
Ah, yes, definitely. Your sources really hit on how incredibly common this is. Especially, they mention after age 40. Seems like almost everyone feels it eventually.
It really does.
But why? What did your research dig up about the core reasons? Why do our joints start, making themselves known like that?
Well, your documents highlight it's definitely more than just simple wear and tear, though that's part of it, of course.
Right.
The key things identified in your sources are specific physiological changes. So first up is the degradation of cartilage.
The cushion between the bones.
Exactly that cushion. Your material notes it loses its elasticity, gets thinner over time, which can then lead to that uncomfortable, bone-on-bone friction.
Ouch. Yeah, that sounds unpleasant.
It really explains the discomfort people feel. Your sources also point to chronic, sort of low-grade inflammation. That's a big factor.
Like a constant irritation.
Yeah, persistent irritant right there in the joints. And something else the material brought up is a reduction in synovial fluid.
Okay, what's that?
Think of it as your joint's natural lubricant.
Ah, like oil for the hinges.
Precisely. Less fluid means movement isn't as smooth, less cushioning. And finally, in some cases, the sources link joint issues to autoimmune disorders.
Like rheumatoid arthritis.
Exactly, like RA, where the body's own immune system, surprisingly, targets and attacks the joint tissues.
Wow. So it's really a mix. Structural breakdown, inflammation, less lubrication, and sometimes the body fighting itself. Complicated.
It is a complex interplay, yeah.
So what symptoms did your sources say are the common signs, the things people should be aware of?
Okay, the material you gathered lists persistent or recurrent discomfort, often an ache or soreness in the joints. Stiffness is another really big one. You notice it especially first thing in the morning, or maybe after you've been sitting still for a while.
Yeah, that morning stiffness.
Right. You might also notice a reduced range of motion, like you just can't move the joint as freely as you used to.
Yep.
And sometimes there's actual visible swelling, or the area might be tender to the touch.
Okay, those are clear signs. So how did your sources suggest managing this? Is it just something you grit your teeth and bear, or are there actual strategies?
Thankfully, no, you don't just have to live with it. Your research dives into several proactive management strategies.
Good.
There's a really strong emphasis across your documents on low-impact physical activity.
Like swimming or cycling.
Exactly. Swimming, cycling, yoga. Those are mentioned as great ways to keep mobility and flexibility up, but without putting too much stress on the joints.
Makes sense.
Weight management is also highlighted. Super crucial, especially for reducing pressure on those weight-bearing joints like your hips and knees.
Right, less load to carry.
Precisely. And interestingly, your sources specifically talk about certain supplements. Things like glucosamine, chondroitin, omega-3 fatty acids, and even turmeric.
Oh, interesting. Did they say they cure it?
Not cured, no, but the suggestion is they can potentially offer some symptomatic relief for some people. Worth looking into based on the sources.
Okay.
And then, for more severe situations, the material does note medical interventions.
Okay.
Things like NSAIDs, that's non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs for pain, or even surgery in some cases, based on what's outlined.
For when things are really bad. Okay, that gives a pretty solid picture for joint health based on your research. Let's maybe shift gears.
Sure.
Another area your research covers a lot, something very visible as we age. Our skin. Your documents touched on why our skin ages. What did you find there?
Yeah, the skin changes are definitely noticeable. Your sources explain it quite well, actually. It's like a tale of two forces, intrinsic and extrinsic.
Intrinsic and extrinsic.
Intrinsic is the internal stuff, your genetics, hormonal changes that just happen naturally over time. Extrinsic is everything outside the environment. And down at the cellular level, your research really emphasizes the reduced production of collagen and elastin.
Ah, the bouncy stuff.
Kind of. They're the proteins that act like the skin's scaffolding and elastic bands, keeping it firm and supple. When production drops, well, you see the effects.
Right. Sagging, maybe.
Exactly. And you also see a loss of natural hydration and oils. That leads to dryness.
So the skin's losing its internal support and its moisture barrier. That's a double whammy.
It really is. And then the big external factors your sources flagged. Number one is UV radiation from sun exposure.
Ugh, the sun always comes up.
Yep. Perhaps the single biggest culprit listed in your reading, along with pollution and the oxidative stress that causes.
Oxidative stress. Free radicals.
That's the idea, yeah. And certain lifestyle choices like smoking or maybe a poor diet, those also accelerate the breakdown process according to your sources.
That really lays out the why. Okay, what about the what? What common signs did your sources highlight as the typical indicators of skin aging?
The material lists several common visual signs people notice. You'll see the appearance of fine lines, wrinkles, especially around the eyes, the mouth.
Crow's feet.
Those two, yeah. Age spots or hyperpigmentation, those darker patches are frequently mentioned. Dryness and maybe some flakiness become more common. And there's often noticeable sagging or, reduced elasticity, particularly around the jawline, maybe the neck.
Right.
Just a general dullness or maybe an uneven complexion is also listed.
Okay. And what did your source material suggest we can actually do about these signs? Is it all just fancy creams or is there more to it?
Your sources definitely lean towards a more holistic approach than just surface stuff, which is good news.
Okay.
They really stressed the importance of hydration, both drinking enough water, but also using effective moisturizers. They specifically call out ingredients like hyaluronic acid.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
For its ability to really hold on to moisture. And crucially, daily sun protection, SPF 30 or higher, highlighted as pretty much non-negotiable.
Every single day.
Every day, according to this research, to prevent more UV damage. Your reading also pointed to ingredients like retinoids.
For collagen.
Yeah, for stimulating collagen production. And antioxidants like vitamin C or E serums to help neutralize those damaging free radicals from the environment.
Okay, so protect and repair.
That's a good way to think about it. And just like with the joints, a healthy lifestyle comes up again. Getting enough sleep, eating a balanced diet, definitely avoiding smoking, all listed as fundamental support.
It really seems like these different areas are connected by that theme. Proactive lifestyle choices matter a lot.
They really do, based on this material.
Okay, moving on. Hair and nails. Your sources describe them as fascinating early indicators of systemic health. Why do hair and nails change so noticeably with age?
That's a really interesting angle from your sources, isn't it? Viewing hair and nails as sort of barometers for what's happening inside.
Yeah.
They attribute these changes to, well, a range of factors. Hormonal shifts play a big role. Menopause, thyroid issues, those are specifically mentioned. Nutrient deficiencies are also flagged as key contributors. If you're low on things like biotin, iron, zinc, maybe protein, that can directly impact hair and nail growth and strength.
So it's not just cosmetic.
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah.
Other factors listed include stress, big one side effects from certain medications, your genetics obviously play a part, and even some autoimmune conditions.
Wow. So changes here could actually be a signal. Something deeper might be going on.
That's the implication in the sources, yes.
So what did your research say these changes actually look like?
The signs noted in your material include, well, noticeable hair shedding or thinning. Sometimes it can even be patchy loss.
Okay.
For nails, they might become brittle or soft, maybe peel easily or break more often.
Yeah, I've heard people complain about that.
Right. You might also just observe slower overall growth for both hair and nails, and potentially changes in their texture, maybe color too.
And how did the sources suggest caring for hair and nails when they start showing these signs?
The material offers several approaches for support and care. Nutritional support is a big theme, as you'd expect, mentioning supplements like biotin, keratin, iron, omega-3s, but usually where deficiencies are actually suspected or confirmed.
Right, not just popping pills randomly.
Exactly. For hair, gentle scalp care, things like massages to stimulate circulation using mild shampoos that was recommended.
Okay.
For nails, your sources advise proper hygiene, keeping cuticles moisturized, and definitely avoiding harsh chemical products like certain removers or detergents.
Makes sense.
And importantly, they really stressed seeking professional evaluation if you see sudden or severe changes. That reinforces the connection back to potential underlying health issues you mentioned.
Good advice. Always best to check with a professional if something changes suddenly. Okay, let's turn now to our underlying structure, bones and muscles. Your sources talked about the natural process of losing bone density and muscle mass, atrophy. Why is this particular age-related change highlighted as being so significant?
Yeah, this one is absolutely critical. Your sources really emphasize it because the combined effect, bones losing density, which increases the risk of osteoporosis.
Right, brittle bones?
And muscles weakening, which is sometimes called sarcopenia.
Yeah.
That combination directly leads to increased frailty. And that means a significantly higher risk of falls and potentially really debilitating fractures.
That makes sense. Weak structure, less muscle to support it and catch yourself.
Exactly. The root causes listed in your material include not getting enough calcium and vitamin D.
The classic bone nutrients.
The classics, yeah. Also, reduced physical activity levels over time. Hormonal changes like declining estrogen and testosterone and things like chronic inflammation or certain diseases can also play a role.
So the framework gets weaker and the power to move diminishes. What symptoms and risks did your research specifically associate with this weakening?
Your material notes symptoms like fractures happening more easily than maybe they would have before. A fall that previously might have just bruised you could now cause a break.
Scary thought.
It is. Back pain or the gradual development of a sort of hunched posture can be indicators too.
Mm-hmm.
Muscle cramps or just a general feeling of weakness are common.
Mm-hmm.
And a key functional symptom listed is just difficulty performing physical tasks. Things that used to feel easy might start feeling like a real effort. These are direct results of that diminished bone and muscle health.
Okay. And what strategies did your sources suggest for supporting our bones and muscles as we age? Based on these insights, how do we fight back?
Well, your documents strongly advocate for specific types of physical activity. It's not just any movement.
Right, what kind?
Weight-bearing exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Things like walking, jogging, even dancing. Those are crucial for stimulating the bones to maintain density.
Use it or lose it, basically.
That's the principle, yeah. And resistance training using weights. Resistance bands, even your own body weight, that's essential for preserving muscle mass and strength.
Okay.
Balance exercises are also highlighted specifically.
Makes sense, right? To reduce the risk of falls.
Diet is huge, too. Focusing on getting enough protein, calcium, and vitamin D.
The big three again?
Yep. Your sources also mention that supplements, and sometimes medications, obviously prescribed by a doctor, play a vital role, especially if someone has a condition like osteoporosis.
Okay.
And for monitoring, they recommend regular screenings, specifically mentioning DEXA scans. That's a type of bone density test usually recommended after age 50 or so.
DEXA scans, got it. Okay, finally, let's dive into an area your sources cover that's maybe less visible, but hugely important. Gut health, digestive comfort. Your material talked about how digestive efficiency can decline with age. What does your research say causes this?
Yeah, the gut is so central to overall health. Your sources explain that digestive function can indeed become less efficient, and for several key reasons.
Like what?
Well, there's often a reduction in the production of digestive enzymes. These are what we need to break down food effectively.
Fewer tools for the job.
Kinda, yeah. Also, gut motility, that's the speed food, moves through your digestive tract.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to slow down a bit.
Okay, slower transit time.
Right. And, really importantly, the composition of the gut microbiome.
All those bacteria.
That vast community of bacteria living inside us, yeah. Its balance can shift with age, maybe becoming less diverse or having fewer beneficial microbes.
Ah, so it's like having fewer tools, a slower conveyor belt, and maybe a less helpful crew working down there.
That's actually a pretty good analogy. Your sources also listed other contributing factors, things like potentially lower stomach acid levels, sometimes called hypochlorhydria,
Okay.
imbalances in gut bacteria, known as dysbiosis, side effects from certain medications. We mentioned antibiotics, NSAIDs earlier.
Yeah.
Those can impact the gut. Dehydration.
Simple hydration matters.
Absolutely. And dietary habits that might not be supporting optimal digestion over the long term.
Okay. So what symptoms did your sources say we might experience because of these age-related gut changes?
The common symptoms listed in your material include things like bloating, more gas, indigestion.
The usual suspects.
Pretty much. constipation, or, on the flip side, diarrhea can become more frequent issues for some people. Some individuals might find they develop new food intolerances as they get older. Things they used to eat fine suddenly cause problems.
Interesting.
And your sources made a point of mentioning that wider systemic effects, like feeling fatigue or even experiencing something like brain fog, could potentially be linked back to gut imbalance.
Wow, that's a much broader impact than just tummy troubles.
It really suggests how connected everything is.
So, what solutions did your source material offer? How can we support our gut health as we age?
Your sources suggested several proactive strategies here, too. They highlighted the role of probiotics and prebiotics.
To help the good bacteria.
Exactly, to help support a healthy and balanced gut microbiome. Consuming a diet rich in fiber is also strongly recommended. Fiber promotes regularity, but it also feeds those beneficial gut bacteria.
Okay, fiber is key.
Definitely flagged as key. Staying well hydrated throughout the day is important, we mentioned that, and practicing mindful eating habits.
Mindful eating, like paying attention.
Yeah, paying attention to how you eat, not just what you eat. Chewing properly, not rushing. That can aid digestion and nutrient absorption.
Good sense.
And finally, your sources suggested identifying and maybe avoiding specific trigger foods, particularly items that are highly processed, high in unhealthy fats, or loaded with sugar, as these can often make digestive issues worse.
Right. Cutting back on the junk. Okay.
So if we sort of pull all these different threads together, from joints to gut, your source material consistently led to this pretty powerful overarching conclusion.
Yeah. What's that?
That while these age-related changes we've discussed are common and, part of the natural process, many are actually far more preventable, or at least manageable, than people might think.
That's a genuinely hopeful note. Yeah. And empowering, really. It suggests aging isn't just this passive decline we have to accept.
Exactly. That's the feeling I got from the documents you provided. They strongly emphasize that proactive lifestyle choices are truly key across all these different areas.
So the same themes kept coming up?
Consistently. Things like getting regular checkups, committing to a nutrient-rich diet, maintaining consistent physical activity that's right for you, actively managing stress, and prioritizing self-care routines. Whether that's mindful skincare, proper hygiene, making sure you get enough rest. Your sources present these not as just minor tips, but as fundamental pillars for supporting health and vitality as you age.
So, based on your material, aging gracefully, it isn't really about trying to avoid changes altogether, because some change is inevitable, right?
Right.
It's more about understanding them and then wisely adapting your choices and habits to maintain vitality, maintain quality of life.
Precisely. It frames the aging process as something where you actually have significant agency. You can influence the trajectory.
We've really dug into a lot of information today. We've explored these common age-related changes you highlighted in your sources: joints, skin, hair, nails, bones, muscles, the gut. Quite a journey.
It has been. And if there's maybe one core insight to distill from all the material you provided, I think it's this: understanding why these physiological shifts happen. That knowledge gives you the power to take informed, proactive steps.
Right.
Based on the practical strategies your own sources suggested, it moves the conversation from just, observing change happening to you to actively engaging with the process.
Okay, so here's a final thought, drawing from all this. If aging, as your sources so clearly suggest, is fundamentally about adaptation, about maintaining vitality through these proactive choices, what does that shift in perspective really mean? How could that change how we approach health, not just later in life, but maybe at any stage?
That's a great question to ponder.
Something for you to think about as you continue exploring all this information. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.